Picture this. You've been waiting your entire life for this exact moment. You've stockpiled energy for years. Suddenly you start secreting an intoxicating, irresistible perfume that carries for miles on the wind. You literally turn up your own body temperature, burning through your reserves just to make your scent travel faster. You are completely, desperately, biologically driven to mate. There is just one massive problem. You can't move, because you're a plant. When we think of a mating urge, we think of animals. We think of elaborate peacock dances, rutting elks, or swiping right on Tinder. We think of a conscious, burning, undeniable desire. But look at a forest, a jungle, or even your backyard garden, and you are looking at an absolute battlefield of reproductive desperation. Plants go to horrifying, brilliant, and exhausting lengths to reproduce. But the million-dollar question is, do they actually feel it? Do plants experience a sexual urge, or are they just mindless biological machines running on cold code? Today, we are going to reconstruct the hidden, highly charged lives of flora to find out. To understand if a plant can feel an urge, we can't just look at a biology textbook. We need to look at how they behave. We need a character. Meet Dracea glyptodon, better known as the hammer orchid. Native to Western Australia, this plant is the ultimate protagonist in a high-stakes romantic thriller. For most of the year, the hammer orchid is nothing but a boring, invisible, shriveled leaf in the dirt. But when mating season arrives, it transforms. The hammer orchid doesn't just bloom, it executes a flawlessly planned heist. And the target? A male thinnid wasp. You see, the hammer orchid doesn't have nectar. It doesn't have anything a wasp actually wants to eat. Instead, it relies on sheer, unadulterated trickery. The orchid grows a specialized lip that looks exactly like a female thinnid wasp. It even mimics the female's exact posture when she's waiting to mate. But visual trickery isn't enough. To make the illusion perfect, the orchid synthesizes a chemical cocktail that perfectly matches the female wasp's sex pheromones. Here is where the tension builds. The plant is literally waiting. Its biological clock is ticking. The male wasp catches the scent. He is overwhelmed by his own sexual urge. He swoops in, spots the female, and grabs her, trying to fly away to mate. But the female is attached to a hinged stem on the orchid. Bam! The male wasp's momentum swings him backward, slamming his back directly into the orchid's pollen packets. Dazed, confused, and thoroughly single, the wasp flies away, only to be tricked by another hammer orchid down the road, delivering the pollen and completing the plant's reproductive cycle. It is a brilliant, capable, and slightly villainous strategy. It requires perfect timing, chemical mastery, and extreme energy expenditure. The hammer orchid acts like a creature possessed by a singular, desperate goal. If an animal went to these lengths, dressing up as another species, creating counterfeit perfumes, and building elaborate physical traps just to pass on its genes, we would say it was driven by an overwhelming sexual urge. But plants don't have brains. They don't have a central nervous system. So how can we possibly bridge the gap between their complex, desperate behavior and the actual feeling of desire? To find out, we have to dig much deeper than Wikipedia. If you look at surface-level botany, you get a simple answer. No. Plants do not feel sexual urges because they lack a brain, an amygdala, a nervous system. Case closed. But if you dive into primary sources, modern plant neurobiology, and the latest academic texts on plant physiology, the definition of urge starts to get incredibly blurry. Let's break down what an urge actually is in you and me. An urge is just a biochemical signal. It's your brain releasing dopamine, testosterone, estrogen, or oxytocin in response to environmental or internal cues, creating a physical tension that demands a behavioral release. Plants do something shockingly similar. They just use a different network. First, consider Florigen. Discovered in the 1930s, but only truly understood at a molecular level in recent decades, Florigen is the flowering hormone. When the days get longer or the temperature hits a specific degree, proteins in the plant's leaves, specifically the FT gene, are activated. This creates a massive systemic chemical cascade. The hormone travels through the plant's vascular system, the phloem, rushing toward the shoot apex. This isn't a passive event. It is a violent physiological shift. The plant stops growing leaves. It stops focusing on survival. It pours every ounce of its stored glucose, water, and nutrients into creating a reproductive organ, the flower. Take the titan Arum, the corpse flower. When its internal chemical alarm goes off, it triggers a process called thermogenesis. The plant literally burns its own stored carbohydrates to raise its internal temperature to over 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 32 degrees Celsius. It does this to vaporize its foul, rotting meat scent so it can travel further into the jungle to attract carrion beetles. This requires an astonishing amount of energy. It is a biological all-in gamble. But what about the feeling? According to plant neurobiologists like Stefano Mancuso, plants possess a complex electrical signaling network. They use action potentials, the exact same electrical impulses that travel down your neurons, to communicate across their bodies. When a plant is stressed, it releases glutamate, a neurotransmitter that humans also use in our central nervous systems. When it comes time to reproduce, a plant is flooded with hormones like auxins, gibberellins, and volatile organic compounds, VOCs. The plant is experiencing a total body chemical takeover. I spent over 20 hours reading through comparative evolutionary biology to script this one point. In animals, a heavy buildup of reproductive hormones is translated by the brain into the emotion of lust or urge. In plants, the heavy buildup of reproductive hormones is translated by the cellular network into the action of blooming, scent production, and heat. They don't feel lust the way we do, because they don't have consciousness, but they do experience a systemic, high-tension chemical imperative that overrides all other functions. They experience the physiological reality of an urge without the psychological theater. This was the breakthrough. Historical and biological facts alone don't naturally form a coherent narrative. If I just told you plants release the FT protein to trigger flowering, you'd click off the video. But when we focus on biological plausibility rather than rigid textbook terminology, a completely new story emerges. We aren't fabricating the science, we are reconstructing the reality of the plant's experience in a way that feels emotionally coherent. Imagine existing in a state of quiet, slow accumulation for years. You do nothing but drink sunlight and pull water from the soil. You are patient. Then, one day, the light hits your leaves at a very specific angle. The temperature warms. Suddenly, an alarm bell rings in your cells. A chemical wave, Florigen, washes through your internal plumbing. You can't ignore it. The tension builds. Your cells begin to multiply at a frantic, painful rate. You redirect all your food, all your energy, away from your own survival and push it outward. You build a trap. You build a perfume factory. You heat up your own tissues until you are burning from the inside out. You hold this exhausting, desperate pose, releasing everything you have into the air, waiting for a wasp, a bee, or the wind to give you release. And when the pollinator finally arrives, when the pollen is taken or received, the chemical tension breaks. The petals wilt. The energy expenditure stops. The plant drops its trap and returns to a state of rest. Does a plant feel a sexual urge? If you define an urge purely as a human emotion, then no. But if you define an urge as a powerful, undeniable physical tension, a chemical command that forces an organism to risk its own life, burn its own energy, and manipulate the world around it just to reproduce, then yes, plants absolutely experience it. They just feel it in the roots, the phloem, and the petals, rather than in the mind. They are the ultimate quiet romantics of the natural world, relentless, driven, and capable of the most brilliant seductions on earth.